everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Well, this week I've had a few thoughts kind of rolling around in my head, and I'm not sure I could really put them under one kind of topic, so I figured I would just put them all out there at one time in one of my my uncut videos. So if you'll forgive me, I hope I won't speak too long. In any case, this all has to do with the idea that trans women are women. And to get there first, I want to talk about a story that a friend told me many years ago. She's a lesbian friend and not somebody you would know now from one of my videos or anything, so don't go researching it because I promise me you'll get it wrong. But she told me the story once of how she could only come when a girl went down on her if she thought of her genitals as a penis. So this was a cisgender woman. So she was assigned female at birth, so she never had to go through transition or anything. And she had this thing, and I was very supportive of that idea. You know, to me, it just seemed just another like wonderful variation of what it meant to be a woman and what it meant to be a lesbian. And I didn't doubt her femininity because of it. And I didn't doubt that she was a lesbian. You know, I think a lot of times lesbians do get doubted because of some of their preferences in bed, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair for anybody. I think we should be free to do whatever we enjoy in bed. But this ties to the topic in that I've often been asked by people, you know, you're a transgender woman. You talk of yourself in those terms. I'm a transgender woman. I'm a transgender woman. When do you get to be just a woman? And the answer, I think, sadly, for the foreseeable future at least, is probably never. And the reason for that is that we just get measured by a different standard. We just do. And I thought of that story that my friend told me, and I try to imagine the reverse, where I told her that, you know, after my surgery, that the only way I could get off was to, you know, when a girl was going down on me, to pretend that my neovagina, as they're called after surgery, was actually a penis. And I'm sure she would have looked at me and kind of paused a second and thought to herself, wow, that's kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, you went through all this trouble to go through transition to get rid of your penis, only to imagine that you have one when you're having sex. So it's a different standard. We're not seen the same way. We're seen through this lens of masculinity, or at least this assumed masculinity that people kind of figure that we had growing up. And it kind of permeates to so many things and so much of the stuff that we do and are judged by. You know, I think to myself that, let's say, athletic performance. I don't know if there will ever be an elite transgender female athlete. I mean, we're starting to see actually some elite trans men who are athletes, but there's this assumption that they were born actually with a handicap, right? They were born, you know, the assumption is physically weaker because they're women, but that trans guys, that trans women didn't have that issue because we were guys, right? We were men. And it doesn't really address the reality of what hormones does to us, you know, also that the fact that we were women to begin with. So I think that any transgender woman who attempts to succeed or excel in an athletic field, you know, whatever it would be, soccer, softball, you know, MMA, as we saw with actually a trans woman who did try to do that. There will always be this assumption that she has these physical advantages. Her performances are never going to be seen as simply the result of her skill and any God-given ability. It's always going to be seen as, oh, well, you know, she's got an advantage because of the way she was born. Even if medical science says that's not the case. And that stretches to other things as well. You know, I think that so many times women, and I mean cisgender women, women who are assigned female at birth, are seen as overcoming things, and that despite their origin, they are aggressive, or they are, you know, take charge, and all these things, that they somehow had to overcome something to be able to be those things. Whereas if I, as a transgender woman, do those same things, it's suddenly seen as somehow an expression of male socialization and not in any way an inherent characteristic of me. I mean, or rather, it's not something that is seen as feminine. The feminine version of those things, I guess, is a better way to put it. And trans women are seen that way in everything. The way we dress, you know, I think so often trans women are accused of being ultra feminine when we come out. That, you know, we put on skirts and heels and dresses and all these things, and it's seen as some sort of, a perversion almost, like that we take the worst stereotypes of femininity and become those things because we were actually guys. When you think about it, you know, really all of this comes down to the idea that there's a prejudice that we actually are men, or that we actually were men, and we haven't gotten rid of all of that. So there isn't this presumption of our womanhood throughout our entire lives. And we as trans women are always arguing for that, right? That really we were women from the very beginning. You just couldn't see it. So when we get a chance to express these things for the first time, sometimes we're a little bit excited, we're a little bit exuberant about it. And, you know, we may dress a little more femininely, at least at first. But, you know, if a young girl does that, you know, she puts on her princess dresses or like spends all day in her ballet outfit with a tutu, you know, she's not in any way judged for that. You know, they might call her daddy's little princess. They may say, oh, she's so cute. Oh my God, she's such a girly girl. Whereas a trans woman is somehow judged for that. By the same token, if we then go the other direction and dress in clothes that are, let's say, for lack of a better term, more masculine, we are then seen as expressing this old side of ourselves that we can't, you know, get rid of. In both cases, our femininity is doubted. And with cisgender women, it is never doubted. So to my friend who said that, you know, when am I going to be just a woman? Like I said, probably never, because we're not judged by the same yardstick. You know, we don't tell women that they actually really aren't women if they act in these ways. You know, we may say they're not acting in a feminine way, but we don't doubt the fact that they were actually authentically women, because biologically they're women. You know, they have all the right parts to begin with. So at no point do we actually tell them that, you know, you actually are a man, or you're acting like a man. Well, we might actually say you're acting like a man. We do say that, but we don't tell them that you are a man like we would to a trans woman. And I don't think that's fair. You know, it's very, very tough to live by these other standards, you know. And it's not just us who are judged by those things, it's also our partners. You know, I mentioned in another video how I got into a discussion with a lesbian who said something along the lines that if a cisgender lesbian sleeps with a pre-op transgender woman, that cisgender lesbian may not actually really be a lesbian. But by the same token, if it's two cisgender women and one of them tells her partner how much she loves it when she's penetrated with a strap-on, like the most realistic strap-on you can find, and there's some pretty realistic ones out there. You know, lesbians forever have been talking about how they shouldn't be judged for that, right? That they're really women, they're really lesbians. That even though they like that sort of pleasure, like my friend in the story in the beginning, it doesn't mean that they're not actually legitimately lesbians. But put a trans woman in that equation, and all of a sudden we do doubt whether that cisgender woman is actually really a lesbian. You know, we don't see the transgender woman with a penis as actually really a woman. We don't. I mean, we might give lip service to that. We might say, yeah, I totally believe you're a woman. Your gender identity is female. I accept you as that. But there's still in society this part in the back of their brains that are still uncomfortable with it, that still sees a penis as a masculine thing, except when it's attached to a cisgender woman. I'm being speculative here, but I can imagine if the technology existed where we could give cisgender women a penis, we wouldn't suddenly call them men or judge them by those standards. We wouldn't bar them from locker rooms and bathrooms and the things that we do with transgender women. We wouldn't see them as a threat for rape or sexual assault, because we would know inherently, we would just know that right here where it counts, they're really women. They are women. But a transgender woman is not judged by those standards. The fates of cisgender women and transgender women, as you can see, I've been talking about both of us actually all along. This is because we're inextricably linked. Until cisgender women and transgender women can be seen by the same standards, I don't think either one of us is really going to be free or liberated. I think we see so-called transgender exclusionary radical feminists judge us by different standards, and they judge other women in their own in-groups. If we speak up for ourselves, we're seen as somehow, being aggressive males, and silencing women. But if a cisgender woman does that as part of their group, they're seen as somehow being assertive and strong and need to be respected for that. And if we act demure, they see us as somehow, like I said earlier in those other examples, as somehow exhibiting the worst in feminine stereotypes. But we give all these freedoms to cisgender women to do these things now in our modern society that we don't give to transgender women. But until all of it can be seen as part of a whole, until we can all be seen by that same lens, that instead of being seen as transgender women and somehow being radically different, and until we can overcome that inherent prejudice of our origin, I think we're going to be at odds too often. I think we are natural allies. The thing that kept us very often in the closet, the thing that kept us trapped in our old lives, was the fact that we would be judged by the idea that to come for somebody who is seen as a man to come out and say that I'm actually a woman is somehow degrading or lowering ourselves. We were trapped by that, and that is because of the way we see women. And until we can change that societal perception, which would of course impact cisgender women as well and their own freedoms, none of us are going to be free. Anyway, that was a long video. Look, ooh, wow. It's like when you get me going, I can really talk for a long time. I should mention that my video next week will be the last probably of, not ever, don't freak out. It'll be the last of 2017, because after that will be Christmas and New Year's. And I think the videos will normally come out on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, and let's face it, nobody is going to be watching on those Sundays. I hope you all have better things to do on those days. So I will return in the first Sunday of January. Anyway, like, share, and subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.